Hello and welcome to Analysis on TV 360 Nigeria. I am Onyi Adekunle. And for the first time since March 2018, Nigeria's inflation rose by 14.23% in October 2020, and that's from 13.71 the previous month of September. Now, this represents a consistent rise in the rate for 14 straight months. Recent reports released by the National Bureau of Statistics also show that Composite Food Index rose by 17.38% in October 2020. Now, that explains why if you've had to purchase food items or groceries in Nigeria recently, you'll understand that you can have so much money, yet you leave the market with your shopping bag barely weighing anything. But how long will this continue, and what are some of the socio-economic impacts of this regular upward trend on Nigerians and the country's economy? Financial economist OGBONNA now joins us to make more sense, economic sense, I should say, of this. Thank you very much now, Mr. Okoko, for joining us on the program. The first thing I'm going to ask you is, what exactly causes inflation to rise?
A few things. When cost of production goes up, and then when you have so much money chasing, few goods, those are the basic things that affect that costs that lead to inflation, in any market. Yeah.
And what do you make of this recent surge now? It's the rate has not risen like this in 30 months. So what exactly do you make of this recent rise?
Now, if you remember correctly, we've been talking about a fragile economy since last year. And then again, when the year started, we got into this whole pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and that also affected our food production, in the sense that by the time when we're supposed to be in the farms cultivating, we're all locked in at home. So it was imminent. It was something that would have happened any which way, that we're going to have scarcity of food, because if you look at the cost of production that have gone up, because we don't have enough food within the system. Number two, we don't have enough reserves, just like you have in other climes where you have crop reserves, you have where they keep food, in case, of rainy days. And then don't also forget that we've had this issue of herders and farmers, the clashes that have been going on, that have chased everybody out of the farm. And then most importantly, there have been this targeted terrorist attack on our food belt. I say that because the amount of food that used to come out from Borno, Yobe, Taraba, these are Benue State. These are places where we cultivate a lot of food that used to feed this country. And then you begin to have this kind of, targeted attack on those, on this particular region where I call our food belt. What do you expect? The only thing that can actually happen is there'll be scarcity of food, and then there'll be a lot of money chasing a small amount of food that that exists in the market. So that's why we're seeing this kind of surge that is happening.
And according to the report that was released by the National Bureau of Statistics now, it said the major drivers of food inflation were increases recorded in prices of bread, cereals, potatoes, basically staple foods. These are things that an average Nigerian would turn to and say, okay, there's no food, but at least you can still try and afford this thing. So what are some of the impacts of this now? For instance, rice, gari. People cannot afford those things because the prices keep increasing. What are some of the impacts that we would see now because of this rise?
See, the impact is going to be much. And again, don't forget, we're entering the festive season in Nigeria, which is the Xmas season. Usually, prices go up when Christmas season comes. And then with the hike that we have in petroleum products, is now going to increase that price. So the effect is going to be a lot in the economy, whether we like it or not. But it's just for us to now begin to think well and begin to plan well. And one of the things I also didn't mention is there's something we always forget when we are planning as a nation. We always forget that we're growing at about an average, we're growing in population at an average of 2.4%. Let's call it what it is. That's 5 million people every year are giving birth into this country. So what it means that whatever plans that you have must be able to cater for those amounts of people. So if you are planning anything and then you are not able to cater for those kind of people, you're walking towards danger.
And of course, recently we also saw the increase in fuel price. Of course, the government says global oil prices, its realities from the global oil market and all of that. But how does this relate to inflation as we see it?
Of course it does. Like I said earlier, cost of production when cost of production goes up, it affects the prices, of goods and services. Now, these are things that must move from one point to another. Goods in transit, they move from farm gate, implements move to the farm. So the tractors that you use in the farm, these are things that require petroleum product, to drive those machineries that you have. So if there's increase in price of fuel, it will always affect the price of goods and services. Then again, let's not also forget that there's this huge infrastructure. What do I call it? Let me call it. We don't have a solid logistic difficulties. Let me just call it, logistic difficulties that we have in our country. So it affects the whole lot. So if you go to the manufacturers, those who process some of these food items, they use cars, they use the cost of living also have gone up. So you have to consider that with the workers that work in your factory. So the input itself, the raw material supply strategy, or when they start to have cost issues, it will definitely dovetail into the cost of the products in the market. So that's why things are happening the way they are happening.
But we've looked at the impact of inflation now on the common or average Nigerian, on the economy as a whole, for government now. When inflation continues to rise, what exactly does it mean for the government and the governance, the economic perspective now of the country?
See, let's look at it from looking at the economy. Economy for me is more like an interaction of different sectors. That interaction. If you have for you to have a productive economy, everything must work together. You must have good infrastructure. You must have good healthcare. You must have good educational system. So everything comes together, and then most importantly, the greatest denominator is efficiency in your system, which are the people that you have, the bureaucratic system, your bureaucracy. Now, if you look at it holistically, you will see that it's going to affect the economy. It's going to affect the income of the nation. It's going to affect productivity. It's going to affect a whole lot of things in the economy. So whether we like it or not, the growth, the predictions that we've had, concerning our GDP growth, those things we can't achieve them unless we begin to change our strategy, unless we begin to change our style of governance. We begin to change, we begin to take some very hard decisions. If you're going to increase the price of fuel, to be able to accommodate so that your budget can, cater for other things like healthcare and all of that, like deregulation. Why we need to also consider cutting down cost of governance. Those who earn so much money, who are part of the government, should also be willing and ready to sacrifice some monies that they normally would get from working for government. And then again, we need to also check something that is very crucial that have been happening to us. If you spend 26% of your budget yearly on a group of people who work for the federal government now on salaries and wages, and then you're not getting anything in return, that means you are working towards a failed state. So you need to begin to look at getting your bureaucracy to become productive. Let people have what they do, give them targets. People should be productive, and people should be made to be productive. As far as they're using government funds to fund them, you need to you need to ask them questions.
And based on what you've said now, this is obviously going to affect government planning. So do you foresee changes being made now to the budget, that's the 2021 budget, which the president recently presented to the National Assembly?
No, first, for me, even before the whole inflation thing happened, let's not forget that the NSAS thing occurred some few weeks ago, and then the Speaker of the House said he's not going to sign any budget that will not accommodate, that won't have line items to compensate those who have lost things. What I would like it on those things that gone into billions. So already there's already an indication, an indication that there will be slight changes in the budget. So, but that will also happen. But let's not also overlook the fact that it's not just about how much you present to the National Assembly or how much the budget is. It's how much you're going to the revenue. How do you fund the budget, which is the most important part that a lot of people don't want to talk about. How are you going to realize the money? Are you going to tax people more? Just pass the financial bill, and that has increased the VAT. These are things that we need to, on the macro level, begin to look at how to make more money, how government will get more money to fund its budget, not just about increasing the budget. Yes, they need to increase the budget. Yes, we have high infrastructure deficit. Yes, we are not putting enough money into our healthcare, in our education, and all other sectors. But we need to be a bit more strategic. We need to think more out of the box. And then again, I think we need to recruit smarter people to come in and help and get us out of the woods.
I mean, let me just quickly take you back now, Mr. Okuku, to the issue of increase in food prices. Now, a lot of issues have arisen. It's still rising, and now also in the past too, we've had cases of, is Nigeria really food self-sufficient? Do you consider us a country that is food self-sufficient? Do we have enough to cater for our citizens?
It is not. It's not possible. We're not self-sufficient when it comes to food. But I can tell you that we're working towards that until the insecurity came. That's why sometimes I feel there is a major sabotage when it has to do with this whole food thing. Now, if, for example, the Anchor Borrowers program that was started by the government, that let's be self-sufficient when it comes to rice, and that as soon as the program started succeeding, the bandits, the invasion became more. So that's why sometimes I feel, this is my personal opinion, I think that somewhere, somehow, some people somewhere don't want us to be self-sufficient when it comes to food. Now, let's even look at when it comes to the dairy sector, when it comes to milk. The demand for milk in Nigeria is still about, I think it's about 1.6 million liters per annum. And then we're doing less than, I don't think we're doing up to 100,000 liters per annum. So how do you cover for the shortfall? We have to import. So there's so many areas when it comes to fish. We're still importing fish into Nigeria. So we're not
exactly. And recently, I believe a lawmaker even said Nigeria loses about 400 billion naira to fish importation. That's serious.
Yes, we do. I think it's even more than that. It's just, these are the ones, you can always go get those data, the ones that come through from M. There are some that don't come, that they still smuggle in through the borders. If you add that, we're looking at over 600 million that 600 million per annum. That's what we spend on fish importation into this country. So if we're not yet there, and we have over 80 million hectares of arable land that we're not cultivating, and we cannot do that without mechanization. So there has to be a robust program on mechanization for us to be able to achieve that. I give you a very simple example. If you want to, a company like IDL, International Distilleries in Ogun State, they consume about 36 million liters of ethanol every year. Okay. Now, for you to do 6 million liters of ethanol, you need to cultivate at least 1,827 hectares of cassava farm at an average yield of 28 tons per hectare. So if you go around Nigeria, the highest farm you will see is somewhere in Iseyin, owned by a company called Solitary, and it's about 5,000 hectares of land. So unless we begin to cultivate this land, clear these places, have a robust plan, like I said, on mechanization. We can't meet up. As we speak in this country, something as small as candy, tom-tom, that the tom-tom is not made in Nigeria. Tom-tom is assembled in Nigeria because tom-tom is made up of three things: glucose syrup, coloration, and flavoring. And these three things are imported. And then 80% is the glucose syrup, which comes from either sugar, yam, potato, or corn. There is no factory anywhere where they make glucose syrup in Nigeria as we speak. It does not exist. Go around the whole country. You're a journalist, so send people out and go and find out if there is a place where they make glucose syrup. So it simply means that every single tom-tom or any other sweet, so-called, in Nigeria that you see is actually assembled in Nigeria, not made in Nigeria. So the raw material supply strategy has to be a bit more robust. So the Ministry of Agriculture has to also collaborate with the state governors, who I think they are the major problems that we have.
All right, Mr. Okuku, I'm sorry. Please, I'll just have you hold your thoughts here. We'll go on a short break, and when we come back, you have to continue. We'll take it from where you stopped. Please go on a short break now, and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us on Analysis on TV 360 Nigeria. If you're just joining, we're still talking about the rising inflation rate in Nigeria, which now stands at 14.23%. That's the rise as at October 2020. And I still have on the program Mr. OGBONNA, a financial economist who joins me via Skype from Abuja. Thank you, Mr. Okuku, for staying with us on the program. Now, before we went on that break, you were talking about government developing a robust plan on mechanization. Speaking about solutions now, please go ahead with the point you were making.
Yeah, so whether we like it or not, it also affects even the pharmaceutical industry. Like I always say, what's it called? Tablets that we take are all extracts from plants. So I don't know if you know about any factory where they do they do extractions from plants. Pretty much all these things are just imported here. The active pharmaceutical ingredients, the APIs, are all imported, and then we just put them together here, which I still call assembling. So until we begin to have what I call a strategic industrialization plan as a nation, which cannot work just by the federal government, having a plan and trying to force it down the throats of on those at the subnational levels. It would never work. What has to happen? There has to be a convergence. There has to be that confluence, that meeting point between the states and the federal government. Because if we're talking about agriculture, which is most important when it comes to food sufficiency and industrialization, apart from things like petrochemicals and all, you need to have those who, they are the owners, they are the custodians of the land. Okay? The state governors are the ones who own the land. So until they understand and become part of your plan, it will be a waste of time and energy for you to plan anything up here. So until we have that common discussion, and then have a plan where each state will say, okay, Ondo State, for example, you're good in cocoa. Okay, let's see, how do we now work and now begin to have chocolates being made, adding value, because you're going to be creating jobs. You're going to also, there'll be a lot more income coming into the state.
And let's look at practical steps now on what can be done to assist local manufacturers also, because whether we like it or not, they need real support to be able to provide enough for the country.
It's a lot of work, like I say in every forum. I just give you a very simple illustration. How many manufacturers really exist as we speak? Okay, now because at the capacity, at the population, at the size of the market, what we have is just the tip of the iceberg. What we have is just too small to support the market. It's too small to support the market. So if you say let's take them sector by sector, for example. If you take, I always like to use cassava because it's one of the most important tubers or crops, because it helps a lot in industrialization and all. If you look at cassava, for example, I said for you to do only for you to have a 6 million liters of, for you to get a 6 million liter of ethanol, you need to cultivate at least 827 hectares of land. Okay, so how do you now meet up when just one company in Ogun State needs about 36 million liters? So is it that the cassava won't drop from the skies? It will be grown from the ground. So where can you find such such ample of land where you can cultivate? Because they're all thick forests. You need to do stumping because there are a lot of big trees there. The kind of equipment you need earth movers to move those things. Those things, if you add it to the cost of production for a farmer, the farmer cannot meet up. So those are the things where, when I say there has to be a robust plan of mechanization, these are plans that the state will say, okay, this is my contribution. The federal will say, this is my contribution. Then you can now bring the farmer you're talking about to now say, these are the issues that I'm having. Because is it okay when you're done with that? We also have a major issue when it comes to logistic difficulties. As I speak to you today, if you move cassava stems from anywhere in Delta State where I have done some transactions, if you move out of the farm gate, the young people in that place will hold you for you to pay what they call produce. This money, they say they come from the local government. You pay them 9,000 naira per truck. Now, these are things that you will encounter until you get to your market. You might, if you leave Abraka, for example, you probably will meet them again Ozoro, or it continues like that until you get to your market. So these are the things that government will need to begin to look at, pay attention to details, see where this, have like a sit down with the people who really do business in Nigeria, those who are not the big players, because the big players don't have so much issues. The big players, the Dangotes and the Otedolas and co, they can just make one phone call and everything is sorted. But there are people who go through this every day. They don't have anybody's number to call. They don't have anybody to support them. So these are the people, if you want to grow an economy, these are the people you need to consider. So again, we'll come to funding. Now, I've heard there are a lot of programs, support for farming. The CBN has come up with so many programs, just to support, to support the agri sector or food production. Now, one of the issues I have is, yes, it's a step in the right direction, but let's not forget, without a venture capital system, functional venture capital system, you cannot go anywhere, because the only person that can walk into a bank to discuss money is someone who has actually done his business plan, who has acquired land, who probably would have hired one or two consultants to work with them, who has done his environmental impact assessment. So if all this, we call it bootstrapping. If you don't have the capacity to do your bootstrapping, where on earth, how will you not come to the bank? How will you not come to Bank of Industry to ask for money? Because you have not done all of that. So who takes care of that? That is where the real problem is. I remember when Soludo was central bank governor, he created a program called SMEs. Can't remember the full meaning, small and medium enterprise, something, SMEs. Now, when he created that, I think it was Sanusi that scrapped it, because it was supposed to be the bankers committee taking 10% of their profits after tax, to support small businesses by way of investing in their businesses, not loans this time, but becoming investors like venture capital. Now, that whole program was finally scrapped because the bankers committee and the central bank never agreed on whether the thing was going to be before tax or after tax. Somehow they just played around it and then they threw it away. That's one of the problems that we're having. People have good ideas, but they can't move from where they are to the next point. Because really, where would they get that initial takeoff funds from? Because they need to take off, because they say in Igbo land, a child that wants to be carried will first of all raise, his or her hands. Okay. Now, that support system that will help you raise your hands as a young entrepreneur, as a young business owner, it doesn't exist. Okay?
I quite understand the point you're making, Mr. Okuku, and I thank you very much for sharing your insights with us on the program. Really insightful there. Thank you very much, Mr. OGBONNA Okuku, for sharing your thoughts with us on analysis. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
All right. That's it on analysis this week. We thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.